Welcome back to the channel. Let's talk about some cargo vans and sprinter vans.
Your hustle got to be strong in this industry, as in any other industry.
Wanted to talk to you guys, just some of you that are out here currently. This is also for you guys that haven't gotten out here yet. This is a little bit of just my experience, my opinion on things, a little bit of advice. All the time, throughout the entire time I've been doing this, 11 plus years, it has been a constant thing to hear drivers complaining about rates, not enough miles, so on and so forth. There's all kinds of different reasons why this happens, and I've got a video where I talked about it specifically. Just the short and sweet of that is the biggest reason that something happens that you're not getting the results that you was hoping you would get. It's going to come down to you as an individual. That's just the short and sweet of it. But what I want to talk about in this video, just kind of shooting the stuff, with you guys a little bit, is with your carrier. Okay, most carriers aren't supposed to be forced dispatch, which means that you just wait. They send you a load, you have to take whatever load they send you. Most aren't, technically forced dispatch, but as a carrier myself and as a driver before, in my opinion, it works best if you are always kind of communicating with dispatch and you allow them to be a forced dispatch with you. I liked it better when dispatch would call me with the load, book me the load, and I just take it, okay, as opposed to call me, let me get all the pertinent details, and then time has passed and they can't win the load, because win the bid because they took too much time. With that said, so I was with the carrier when I first started, a smaller carrier, and the rates weren't very good. My time with that carrier, I averaged about 77 cents per loaded mile, which obviously 77 cents per mile back then, 11 years ago, even as recent as about 7 years ago, that money went further than money's going right now. So that helped to that extent. So getting 77 cents on average per loaded mile now is a little rough, a little bit more rough. But anyhow, towards the last probably year and a half that I was with that carrier, before I made the move from that carrier to Barrett, one of the things that I kept talking with dispatch about, which was also the guy that owned the carrier, is the rate. He didn't like to do short runs. He was more on the, send my guys on a 1,200, 1,500 mile run plus. And he claimed it was due to paperwork and things like that, which, being on this side of this side of the phone now, being a carrier myself, I'm not sure how that benefited him. Specifically because there's not a ton of paperwork that you really have to do. But anyhow, neither here nor there. So it was basically to the point I'm just running ragged. I'm running, I'm getting a load out to Washington, and then I'm hightailing it down to LA, or I'm hightailing it back east all the way to Minneapolis or something. I was just doing a lot of chasing freight, which we do, don't get me wrong. As an expediter, you should expect to chase the freight. That is, in my opinion, how you're going to end up with the best results. Chasing freight is something that I feel people should do, because I believe that helps you get your best results. But what I mean by chasing the freight is relocating once you've dropped off to a place that your odds are a little bit better of getting a load if you're in a bad area as it is. I always advise people to use Google Maps. It offers the ability to pin locations. I pin every one of my pickup locations. That way over time I gather information to see where I need to be. You'll get a lot of pins in certain areas. You'll get no pins in other areas. So it just gives you a better idea of where you would like to be and where you're doing best at, or where at one time when I was at Barrett, where Barrett was good at, where I needed to relocate to. So you do have to be smart about it. It doesn't mean you just pick up and start hightailing it for no reason, just for the sake of, say you end up somewhere, say Minneapolis, you're like, oh, Chicago's the best area, I'm gonna hightail it to Chicago every time. Or I'm in Kentucky, I'm hightailing it to Chicago. Just be smart about the moves, but I think you do need to strategically position yourself, for the best results. And that's based on information you pay attention to and gather, and that'll help you make a better informed decision on where to go. Where I was talking about deadheading those major moves, like it was a regular, like I remember one time in particular, it was me and my other van, my driver in my other van when I was with this company. We both had a load out in Montana. I think my load was about an hour further west than his. We dropped, we met up, we got our sleep, and we both hightailed it back east. One of us stopped in the Minneapolis area, and the other one went over into Wisconsin to give us a little bit of separation so we weren't right on top of each other. And now, and after time, it was just like that's crazy moves, but at the same time, those were good moves with that carrier, okay, because of the way they operated and the connections they had. So the point in bringing all this up is to say that at one point, I eventually, the fact that he didn't want to do shorter runs, pretty much anything under 1,000 miles, and definitely wasn't liking to do 300 milers, 400 milers. I told him, I said, hey, I'm no longer going to those dead zones such as California, Washington's, the border towns in Texas. I wasn't doing it for less than 90 cents. Now, mind you, the contracted rate that I had agreed to was 80 cents. But I was just like, I'm not doing it. I had been with them long enough. I had worked hard enough that I had that leverage to, say what I wanted and not be much of an issue. I know he didn't like it, and I had to continually kind of have that discussion with him on why. And it did. It worked better because if you work in the regular lanes, getting your regular 80 cents or better for some of them short runs, your profit margin starts to expand, and you don't have to work as hard and put your van through as much wear and tear if you're getting a good profit margin. You know what I'm saying? And it's not to say that now when I say profit margin, that doesn't mean like, oh, I got to get $1 a mile on everything, or I got to get 95 on everything. Like, that doesn't matter either, because you can be getting paid $1 a mile but only get 1,500 miles a week, where the guy getting 80 cents a mile is doing 4,000 miles a week. The guy at 80 cents has more money at the end of the day. Now, some people will debate that, the wear and tear on the van, the repairs, blah, 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 blah. Like, I'm telling you, it'll wash out to where the person running more at that kind of rate is going to make more money than the high rate at a very low mileage. I knew a guy specifically when I was running for this carrier. I was running regularly, anywhere between 300 and 4,500 miles a week. And this other guy, he was with Bolt at the time, and they were paying 95 cents a mile. And he just couldn't make the move. But he was lucky to get 1,200 miles in a week. If he got 1,200 miles in a week, he was killing it. Whereas me, as I said, I'm doing between 3,000 and 4,500 miles every week. So again, more money is going to be in the bank at the end of the week with the 3,000 to 4,500 than the 1,200 at 95. And that's an instance where, again, do the math. Math will help you a lot in this business as far as, knowing your operating costs, your cost per mile to run. Because if you know your cost per mile to run, and you know what you're getting paid, if you're keeping track of what you're making per mile, then obviously you know what your profit margin is at that point. You know how much you're netting, and you know whether it's worth it or not. He reluctantly, worked me the way I was asking him to work me. And I didn't see Laredo for a long time. I think the furthest south I went was somewhere in Louisiana. I got my 90 cents though, and I stayed up in the Midwest and the East Coast, making pretty solid money, I'm still getting pretty solid miles. So it all worked out. So I guess the point in all that is to communicate with your dispatch. Don't be afraid to draw a line. And if your dispatch doesn't work with you or doesn't want to work with you, or you're just combative all the time with each other, find a new carrier, man. It's as simple as that. Don't try to make it work if it's not going to work. If they're not willing to work with you, and you know what you're talking about, and you've tracked the numbers and everything's just playing out horribly, and again, this is a fine line when you're talking about these things, because some people may think that their opinion is valid because it's their opinion, but they don't really have the facts to back up where they're coming from. Because again, you hear drivers bitching all the time. Oh, I don't get this, I don't get that. And then you can hear the other side of the story, and then you can find out, well, they don't like to go to the East Coast, they don't like to go to the West Coast, They don't want to go down south. They don't want to run overnight. And after they get a load, they need 12 hours of sleep before they can do another load. So once you start finding out all the details, you know, as I said, goes back to what I had mentioned earlier, is that the majority of the time, the problem with why somebody's not succeeding is the individual themselves. Now, that's not to say the carriers get a free pass, brokers get a free pass, whatever it may be. You don't get a free pass. It's just to say that's, in my experience, what I've come across. So, again, be data driven on the decisions you're making. You know, keep track of your rate per mile. Track your mileage, loaded, deadhead, relocate. Keep track of all your miles. Keep track of your gross. Keep track of your rate per mile. Keep track of your cost per mile. And anybody that doesn't know how to do cost per mile, I mean the basics. You take your fixed cost. You take your average maintenance cost, your average fuel cost throughout the year. You know, the base number that most people use is 100,000 miles for the year. So use that as a base. Do all your numbers, run all your numbers, see what your cost per mile is. Currently, most people's cost per mile is probably, and that's considering you have a van payment, you know, commercial insurance, your fuel, average maintenance, things like that. Is going to be roughly around 50 cents per mile. It's going to be right around where your cost per mile is to run. Whereas, just for an example, a few years ago, my average cost per mile was around 35 cents. So that's a huge difference, man. That 15 cents is huge. But as I said, the main point in all this is just to let you guys know, take charge a little bit, be a little assertive. I know it's tough because a lot of people feel like, well, I don't want to hurt this relationship, I don't want to not get a load, and that's unfortunately the boat the majority of us put ourselves in, is that we feel like, you know, we're going to be sunk by these people we're working with if we don't go along with them, you know. But it's not the case. As long as you're willing to, you know, keep your eyes out for another carrier, you know, talk to drivers, pay attention to your numbers. Don't allow that to cause you to fail. Okay, be in constant communication with dispatch. You know, and where I mentioned before as far as forced dispatch, non-forced dispatch. Okay, my thing is, and what I always advise people, as I said before, I want dispatch to call me and just give me a load. Okay, but if I have issues, if I see that my dispatch is doing me wrong on a regular basis, or I feel I'm not getting the most out of my dispatch, I'm communicating in between loads. I'm saying, hey, you know what, you've sent me to Florida a couple times lately. I don't want to go to Florida no more. You know, you haven't been able to get me out. I'm deadheading out of there. I'm wasting days and money. I don't want to go to Florida no more. Okay? Or if you do send me, I need X amount of money in order to go there. Say they're sending you to the East Coast on a consistent basis, and you're coming out of your pocket for all kinds of toll money because of the bridges and the toll roads and all that, and they're never compensating. Hey, unless I go out that way, I'm going to need some extra money on top of that for tolls. You know, things like that. You communicate that in between. And if they continue to just ignore you or not do what you're asking them to, jump ship, man. That's what you got to do. You got to always be willing to, make that move. Nobody's going to be more concerned with your business than you. You know what I mean? So just be educated, be knowledgeable, have all the information you need at hand in order to make a good decision for your business. So touching on carriers and whatnot, I want people to understand that are getting into this or are new to this, there's a difference between a carrier dispatch, which means, you know, carriers have dispatch, people that work as dispatch, as opposed to a dispatch service. And the difference being is the carrier is going to have operating authority. You know, they're going to have their MCDOT number. A dispatch company is not going to have that, and they're going to ask for your operating authority to operate under. Don't do that. That is like the most idiotic thing I've ever heard, because you are trying to build your company, and you want to go give it to a dispatch service who is trying to bring on as many vehicles as they can to make their money because they're getting a cut off each load. They aren't going to be concerned with your operating authority. They're not going to be concerned with the quality of service and all of those things. So unless they're working for you as a dispatch for your carrier, your operating authority, your motor carrier, then your best interest isn't always going to be at their forefront. And they may possibly use your authority to run other vehicles that don't have authority but are willing to give them a cut. So again, you could end up ruining your entire business on that. Those guys are not legit. They are just grimy ass people just trying to make money off of everybody else's hard work and dedication that they've put into creating a carrier, getting their authority, getting their vehicles, and trying to create a business. They just want to leech off of that shit, man. Stay away from them, okay? They are just trash, and they're all over these Facebook groups, some of them. So be mindful. In my opinion, if you're in these groups and you see somebody spamming you as a dispatch service, first thing to do is somebody says they're dispatch, ask them for their MC number. Ask them for a company name and their MC number. Run that through Safer. All you got to do is put into the Google search Safer, and it'll come up with a link or a page. You can put in the business name, you can put in the MC number, you can put in the DOT number, and that will tell you if they're a legitimate business, if they're a legitimate operating authority, a legitimate broker or carrier. If they don't have those things and they're just an LLC dispatching service, I highly suggest not dealing with those. Okay, they just are trash in my opinion. They're ruining it for everybody else that has gone about it the right way. They're just leeching, and they don't need to be a part of our industry, guys. Like, it's up to us. Again, it's up to us to kind of self-regulate where we can, man. Some people might want to look at it like, oh man, you trying to worry about that man's pocket. No, I'm worried about my motherfucking pocket, man. My pockets. Okay? My pockets are directly related to people that are out there doing shit illegitimately or unethically when I'm trying to do everything the right way. Why should you be punished or hindered in progression of your business because somebody else is being a leech and ruining the thing that you're trying to do? So just stay clear of that, okay? And one of the things I was saying, if you get into these Facebook groups and you see that, let the admins and mods know. Like, we need to clean these things up, man, because collectively we can do some change. You know what I'm saying? It's not like we're going to change the business overnight or change things dramatically, but we can at least do our part, right, guys? At least do our part. All right, and with that, I am going to get out of here, man, and I will holler at you guys later.
Your hustle got to be strong in this industry, as in any other industry.